I've always heard people say that I have a good memory or I have a very bad memory. But let me tell you something, people. There's no such thing as a good or a bad memory. There is just trained memory and there's untrained memory. Toastmaster of the evening, fellow Toastmasters, and my dear guest. I would like to start by giving 10 random words to all of you. So I hope you have your papers and pens handy. And I want you to do your best to memorize these words. The trick is that you do them in the same order that I'm telling you. I don't want you to write them down right now. I just want you to do your best to memorize them. Everyone's ready? Thumbs up. Okay, so let's start. The first word is tree. The second word is balloon. Third is bird. Fourth is box. Then you have board. You have diamond, night, mask, toothpaste, and sign. I want you to take 30 seconds and write as many words as you remember on the piece of paper in the order that I mentioned. The trick is that you write them in the order that I mentioned. Your time starts now. 30. If you get stuck on one, you can just move on to the other. Time to wrap up. Okay, Toastmasters and guests, how did you do? You could message me in the chat box. Okay, so let's see what were the words. The first word was tree. You could correct them for yourself. The second word was balloon. Then you had bird, box, board, diamond, night, mask, toothpaste, and the last word was sign. How many of them did you get them correct? How many of them did you get correct? I want you to mark it for yourself out of 10 and put it in the chat box so that we can all see. Now, let's talk about why did you remember what you did? Some of you would have got the word correct, the first word correct, which is tree. And if I ask you, okay, so why did you remember this? Well, you would say, Neha, that was the first word, which brings us to our first principle, which is first or primacy, which means that you're most likely to remember information or that you have learned in the beginning of the event or a series. For example, if you go to a party, you're most likely to remember names of people you've met in the beginning of the party. Some of you would say that, Neha, we remember the word sign. Well, why? Because that was the last word. So that brings us to a second principle, which is last or recency. So we can take the example of the same party. So if you go and meet people in that party, you're more likely to remember people you met in the beginning and people you met towards the end. There would be some of you who would say, well, we remembered words like balloon, board, and box. And if you ask me why, I would say because the information was organized. All the B words, balloon, board, box. So which brings us to our third principle, which is organized or chunk. Our brain is likely to remember information. Our brain is likely to remember information that is organized or chunked. So if you're going for grocery shopping, it would be easier if you remembered the list of fruits, vegetables, and dairy separately. It would be a lot easier to remember them. Some of you would say that, okay, we also remember the word diamond. Now, why would you remember the word diamond? Why? Because you have emotional attachment to it. Now that brings us to our next principle, that is emotion. So you remember the word diamond because you had emotional value to it. Our brain remembers information to which we attach emotion. So emotion plus information is a long-term memory. Some of you would have, I am sure, remember the word night. Now, why would you remember the word night? That's because it was unique. That brings us to our next principle, that is uniqueness. Our brain tends to store information that is different or unique, and that makes it unforgettable. Did any of you remember the word toothpaste? I am sure some of you might have that on your list. Now, the reason that you remember it, if I ask you, you said, well, Neha, we use it every day, every morning. I hope everyone does that. So that brings us to our next principle, familiarity. we are most likely to remember information that we are familiar with. So imagine you met your new neighbor has the same name as a family member, a sister or a brother. You're most likely to remember the name of that person because that name or information is familiar to you. How about the word mask? Some of you, I am sure, would have remembered the word mask for the only reason because you visualized it, which means visualization is one of the principles. If we tend to make a mental picture of something, we generally remember that. Okay, my brain is very good at storing information in terms of pictures. And there would be some of you who would remember the word box and board. That's because you associated them or connected them. So you made a connection of this is next to that, and that is why you remember this information, which means that associating one information that we already know to a new information helps us remember it even better. Now, if you're all in a safe environment, I would like you to close your eyes and do this activity with me, and we'll try and remember all these words and use our brain's power. Okay, so please close your eyes. Imagine there's a huge tree in front of you. You can see the leaves of the tree, and attached to it are balloons. So you can see the size of the balloon. The balloon is in the favorite color. It could be red, pink, yellow, orange, whatever your favorite color is. Imagine huge balloons tied to the tree. And then all of a sudden, there are some birds in the sky that come and with their beak prick the balloon. And where did these birds come from all of a sudden? They came from a box that was on the ground. So you see a huge wooden box on the ground from which the birds came in. Next to the box was a board. That's a skateboard. And on the skateboard, there was a diamond that was rolling. It rolled, a bright shining diamond that was rolling on the skateboard. It rolled and it fell on the head of the knight. Now the knight had lack of oxygen, so he had to take a mask and put it on his face. But the mask was dirty, so we had to use a toothpaste and clean the mask. And once you finished cleaning, you threw the toothpaste and it hit a sign that lit up in neon color. Now, all of you, I want you to open your eyes and try writing these words again and see how many do you remember now. Do you think you remember more than before? What was the first word? What was the second? Can you write them in the backward orders as well? Can you try writing what was the last to the first? Because we're doing a reverse meeting, so let's try that as well. I want you to do this and ping me in the chat box. How many did you remember? I am sure there's some progress from what you remembered before. I would like to conclude that, and I would like to reiterate to everybody that there is no such thing as a bad memory. We just need to train our memories in a way that we remember information. I hope the principles that I've shared and the small exercise we did help you unleash the power of your super brain. This is the resource link. I will share it in the chat box. If you're interested, you could have a look at this. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction, Toastmaster of the evening.